Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. How's everyone feeling? Today is good weather and everything as well. So good afternoon, my name is Gabriel from Elavandi, and I'm your host for today at the World FinTech Festival Malaysia. Before I start, I would like to thank our host, UOB Malaysia, for hosting us at the Bangsa branch in Kuala Lumpur. UOB is also a member of the Elavandi Advisory Committee, which includes members such as Ant, Tencent, Temasek, MasterCard, Crypto.com, Circle, and iCapital. Brief introduction, Elavandi is a non-profit and was set up by the MAS, a Monetary Authority of Singapore, just last year, and with a clear mission. Our mission was put forth by Senior Minister of Singapore, Tharman, MAS board including Deputy Prime Minister Heng, Deputy Prime Minister Wong, as well as MD Ravi Menon. Our mission is to foster an open dialogue between the public and private sector to advance fintech in a global digital economy. The World FinTech Festival is one such platform where we try to bring together, public and private sector. And I must say, I'm extremely glad to be back in Kuala Lumpur. It's been 3 years, just in person, and it's a pleasure to be in Malaysia. Malaysia is a tremendously exciting market from a digital economy perspective. Data from Bank Negara Malaysia showed that transactions via electronic payment channels increased by 30% from 2020 to 2021, reaching over 7.2 billion. So it's a B, not an M, billion transactions. Looking deeper at payment trends since I last set foot in Kuala Lumpur, it is clear that the adoption of internet banking and digital banking has grown sharply since 2019. We have seen transactions rising based on data, rising from 500 billion to more than 2 billion in 2021, and mobile banking transactions rising from 489 million to 1.4 billion. So I'm very excited today to hear from our esteemed panelists, all seated right in front here, with topics around businesses and sustainability. These are two key topics. For Singapore FinTech Festival, which will begin in November 2nd to 4th, every year our themes are selected carefully to reflect prevailing opportunities and challenges. And this year, we will address 60,000 global attendees in person to Singapore to address the theme around building resilient business models. As we know, the fintech industry is currently undergoing a major stress cycle. We need to stay resilient, we need to stay viable, and this affects corporates, fintechs, and SMEs, which is our audience mix today. Most famously, I think we know Klarna, for example, has had valuations who dropped from $46.1 billion to just $6.5 billion. This is a seven times drops of valuation. So models, exit strategies, markets are evolving, and so must the industry. So at SFF this year, the Singapore FinTech Festival, we will deconstruct the very essence of what it means to run a resilient business models. We will bring together world leaders who will share deep insights on how to build a resilient business model that can weather the storm. I'd like to welcome everyone here to Singapore from the 2nd or 4th November to join us on this journey to learn, create new opportunities, investments, and partnerships. With that, I'd like to invite and pass our time over to our host from UOB Malaysia, Mr. Yap Kok Tee. He's Executive Director, Country Head, Channels and Digitalization, to share his welcome note.
Thank you very much. My name is Kok Tee. I look after channels and digitalization. And FinTech One Piece is actually part and parcel of our portfolio, and we have been very much involved in MAS, and now we are very happy to be part of partner with Elavandi going forward. I recall many years back, not that many years back, the first FinTech festivals, we have MAS rep as well, and we have it at different locations. And I believe we have it at MDEC as well. And this time around, in fact, we have Works, one of the co-working space. And we are glad to welcome everybody back to experience this and get some sharing from all the panelists so that you make our trip to Singapore FinTech Festival very exciting and a place that we always look forward to. And every year, without fail, I participated in Singapore FinTech Festival. Unfortunately, the past 2 years, I couldn't make it. But nevertheless, I've registered myself, 2nd to the 4th of November. If you have not registered, please do so. And this wonderful place here, in which is one of the premium locations in Bangsa, in Kuala Lumpur. And this is where we house our Painting of the Year award as well, all the beautiful painting here. And these are what we call famous artists in Malaysia. And you will find that it is a beautiful location, beautiful home for all of us to do banking. And it's the way we address the segment of the business that we wanted. It's a privileged banking segment. And we are very proud that we have been the largest foreign bank in this country for some years. And with the acquisition or the integration with Citibank, consumer banking business, we have further anchored our presence in Malaysia. And we're partnering Singapore FinTech Festival and Ilawandi together with UOB. We further commit ourselves to how we're going to engage our SME digitally and making sure the business is sustainable in the longer period of time. And this is our commitment as a SME bank. It's a commitment of a significant player in the banking industry, in which UOB have been operating for the past 71 years. And I again welcome you to UOB Malaysia, and for all the tech, the innovative guy and those tech player, fintech guy who are seated here, you will find that your engagement in this session will be nothing complete unless you join all of us in the Singapore FinTech Festival, right? And I'm sure you will find the day discussion is a session that's very enriching and very rewarding. And without taking much of your time, I think the more important thing is the audience, the panel speakers that we will be present here. And we have people from the government, people from the MDEC, and as well from from the education side. And we also from Big Bay, of course, from Avanandi as well. Okay, let me hand it back to you. Okay,
thank you, Mr. Yao.
Okay, thank you.
The format today is meant to be really cozy, and without further ado, let me pass on the time to Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, who is also President FinTech Association of Malaysia, who will be moderating our first panel on SME Digitalization journey. Wilson, please.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. A very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wilson. I'm the President of the FinTech Association of Malaysia. And I echo what Kok Tee was saying. I remember vividly, I think we made the first trip about five years back in Singapore for the Singapore FinTech Festival. And that was held in Expo, if I remember correctly. And SFF organizer was very smart in serving the best of Singapore chicken rice. Of course, the Malaysian delegation was debating, right, whether the Malaysian chicken rice is better or Singapore chicken rice is better. That will leave the argument for the rest of the day. So today is my privilege on behalf of the FinTech Association of Malaysia to be your moderator for the next 1 hour. I will explain the flow of this panel discussion first. So I will do a short intro to frame the panel session before I would then invite our Executive Director of UOB, Hui Ming, to come on stage to share insights on an SME report which UOB was involved in producing. There are a lot of key insights that will be very beneficial to SMEs, fintech companies. I see a lot of familiar faces here in the hall. And then I will then invite the rest of the panelists to take the seats for us to have a lively and engaging sessions. So today, it is very exciting to discuss on the spotlight on SME digitalization and sustainability due to a couple of reasons, right? The significance of SMEs, there are many. Number one, name big tech giants or unicorns or large conglomerates or listed companies. All of these players, they were once SMEs in terms of their value chain and life cycle. And number two, particularly in Malaysia, the same can be spoken for the economy of Singapore as well. SMEs form the backbone of the economy for many countries in this region. And this is where today the panel discussion will focus a lot more on what are certain insights that we could learn, harness synergy to address the top-in-mind challenges for SMEs out there when it comes to harnessing digitalizations, and what are the digital tools SMEs need, and what are the value-add services that SMEs can leverage on to turbocharge your businesses. And of course, we have Gopi here from MDEC as well. We will seek his insights on what are some of the government support in Malaysia in capacity building for SMEs in this nation. And of course, we also have fintech company Big Pay to talk about how can fintech facilitate growth or potentially cross-border expansion for SMEs in the region. So without further ado, we shall start the first segment of the session, whereby I would like to invite Ms. Hui Ming, the Executive Director, Country Head of Business Banking of UOB Malaysia, to take the stage. Thank you.
Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome once again to today's session. It's my pleasure to be here today to share with you some of the key insights that is coming out from the SME ASEAN Transformation Study. This particular study is developed in collaboration with Accenture as well as Dun & Bradstreet. It is done once in 2 years, and this year itself, we managed to get a whole of 1,005 SME that is across various disciplines in 5 various markets, which is Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. We do it once in 2 years for 3 key reasons. Number 1, we want to understand the trends that is shaping the growth of SME today. Number 2, we also like to understand what is it that they are doing that they make them adapt to the changing business environment. Number 3, we would like to also use this opportunity to share with SME some of the digital transformation as well as other growth strategies that will actually help them scale and help them to become more resilient. This is very important to UOB because SMEs make up of 95% of the total enterprises in ASEAN. They have contributed to about 30 to 53% of the GDP of the respective country. They also make up about 75% of the total workforce in the ASEAN, contributing to 30% of the total exports in the ASEAN region. And so for UOB, we believe that by helping SME build resilient businesses is our way to build the future of ASEAN. From this particular study, we have derived 3 key insights. Number 1 centers very much around the business sentiments. Nearly half of the SMEs today share with us they want to develop a business model and transform their business model in 2 particular areas. Number 1 is on the digitalization. Number 2 is in the area of sustainability, which is why later the session, there will be a separate session on sustainability where you will hear more about what is important to us. Over the last 2 years, most of the customers has been trying to adapt to the continual challenges that they face through the pandemic. So now in this quarter 2022, the situation has changed. 74% of the customers are now telling us, or SMEs are telling us, they are looking into expanding internationally within ASEAN and beyond ASEAN. So this shows the SME has become more resilient over the last 2 years. 74% of them, coincidentally, also share that they want and they are having a strong desire for the bank to actually form a tripartite collaboration with the SMEs, with the governments, as well as with all the ecosystem players out there. On the second theme is very much on digitalization. We all know that digitalization has really leveled the playing field for SME to actually expand their reach in the regional markets. So what do we get from this survey? The survey shows us that 66% of them actually are willing to increase their spend in digital transformation for the purpose of growth. 4 key areas that want to invest more in. Number 1 is on the marketing side. Number 2 is on customer engagement. Number 3 is in the areas of network management meaning with more and more interconnected network of devices, they want to be able to have some services that help them administer it efficiently as well as effectively. The last area is about operational efficiency. They want to cut costs. They want to manage their costs in a more efficient manner over a long term. Through the pandemic, SME actually has developed a new perspective, especially in the area of customer service and customer engagement. So SME today want to prioritize their customer experience through digital channels. They are doing it through three different areas. Number one is on the technology, investing into the technology solutions. Number two, they are looking at how they can actually improve the user interface to make it more friendly. Number three, they are looking at convenient platform to make sure that they can keep their customer engaged. So with this, we also can see that the US SMEs has actually developed resilience through digitalization, through the new solution they do, because now they are able to tap into the growing digital economy. They can get new customers through the new digital solution that they have adopted. On the third areas of the key themes that we see is sustainability. Sustainability has emerged now as a mega trend. There is no longer a buzzword, but an integral part of any company strategy. So what has happened is, majority of customers, like you can see from here, 65% of them tell us that they see these areas of is an important and a growing concern for them. And they would like to have a sustainability strategy within their reach. However, getting started is really a challenge. In fact, only a very small proportion of them, 35%, in fact, share with us that they're currently in the experimentation mode. They are just trying out some of the sustainable business processes. Even though they are very nascent stage, the two areas that they want to focus more on is how they can develop new business models, new products, as well as new services to be more involved in this space. Also, majority of them also feel that they would like to improve their energy, water, and resource efficiency. Again, very much linked to how can they be more cost efficient in the long run. So I've covered three particular areas just now on the business sentiments, on digitalization, as well as sustainability. So if you forgot everything I said, the next three slides are the most important, but there's no numbers. Number one, I think we all know, digitalization is the new norm. It's with us, we have to sleep with it, live with it. Sustainability, mega trend, it must be now integrated into every business strategy. And of course, where UOB comes from, we actually will be the one that want to partner our customers to drive scale and efficiency to help them build resilient businesses. So with that, I will end my presentation and sharing. If you want to know more about this particular study, you can download it from uob.my/ASEAN SME. So with that, I'll pass back to Wilson. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Hui Ming. Yeah, please give me a big round of applause. Yeah, you may take your seat. Yeah. I will come to you on some of the questions in relation to the report that you have just shared. And it is also my privilege to invite an esteemed lineup of panelists who will be joining us for the next 40 minutes or so to discuss more on SME digitalization. So first of all, I would like to welcome the Chief FinTech Officer of Monetary Authority of Singapore and also the Chairman of Levandi, Mr. Sopnendu Mohanty, to take a seat. Welcome. So Sopnendu actually flew in this morning, right? And he'll be returning back to Singapore later tonight. The last flight. Yeah, thank you for gracing the event here in Bangsa, KL. And secondly, I would like to invite Mr. Gopi, the Chief Digital Industry Officer of MDEC, to take the stage. Gopi is not foreign to the fintech ecosystem, to the SME ecosystems. I think his trademark GAIN program under MDEC has helped many local SMEs to leapfrog to regional champions, in which I will also ask a lot more questions on Gopi later. Third, we already have Hui Min here. Just to reintroduce Hui Min is the country head and also the executive director for business banking of UOB Malaysia. I believe as a business banking head, Hui Min has a lot of insights in understanding the needs of SMEs and business banking clients across Malaysia and also in the region, in which how digitalization could further spearhead enhancement and advancement for this clientele. And fourth, I would like to invite Mr. Salim, the CEO of BigPay, which is a leading fintech company, to take on the stage. And last but not least, I would like to invite Ms. Ann, the founder of Group CEO of ACE Adventure Group, to take a stage. Thank you. So we'll attempt to make this panel discussion to be as lively and engaging as possible. I see many familiar faces. We have obviously senior bankers here, Kok Tee. I still remember in 2015, when I first got to know Kok Tee, he was managing all of the UOB branches nationwide. And he went on stage at Magic Cyberjaya. I think that was one of the payment fintech events. And he was talking about digitalizations and all of the initiatives. And to be honest, at that point of time, 7 years back, I was skeptical. In fact, I shared with William, Michael, and the team as well from UOB. Because being a traditional banker who has 30 years of experience, how could you transform and also breathe in and out when it comes to adopting digitalizations? And today I'm proven wrong. I think 7 years later, UOB has done many initiatives, both in Malaysia and in Singapore and also in the region. UOB Malaysia has also joined the FinTech Association as a member to collectively spearhead more FinTech advancement for the country. And of course, we have FinTech firms, we have representatives from the regulators, we have senior industry leaders, digital banks, SMEs who are in this small but highly privileged setting today. So with that, I would like to invite our panelists to do a short intro and also more about the work and the roles and responsibilities of the respective organizations. May I have Sopnendu to start?
Oh, okay. Hi, good to be here. I'm the Chief FinTech Officer at the MAS, and well, I do regulations, policy development, market development, and things which doesn't fall in my scope also gets added, and I decide to do what I feel to do strongly about this market, and somehow I've been lucky to get it done. So that's my introduction.
Thank you. Salim.
Hi, I'm Salim Dunani, as the CEO and co-founder of BigPay. We are a neobank in West and Southeast Asia. Started off in Malaysia and now launched in Singapore and also launching in Thailand as well. Our mission is to increase financial well-being one transaction at a time, whether that's a consumer or whether it's an SME or a freelancer or someone in the gig economy.
Thanks, Salim. Hui Min, who doesn't require introductions, but perhaps if you could share more of the initiatives that the bank is sharing.
I will share less about the initiative, but I think to give a more overall pictures of what UOB would like to achieve is, as I've shared earlier, is UOB, we are here to really want to help business to build a very resilient business model. And with that, this is our way to help to build the future of ASEAN. So that part is very clear in our mandate, and is something of all our initiatives that we are going to introduce will be all surrounding supporting this dream or this mission that we want to achieve.
Right, so, thanks, Hui Min. Yeah. Gopi, over to you.
Hi, my name is Gopi. I work for Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, the agency that's running the digital economy for Malaysia. Not small, it's 22.3% of the GDP, and I run ecosystems. So my job's working with all of you, with industry, with private sector, with everybody. So I handle 3,000 companies, 1,000 ecosystem players, and 12 markets, global markets, which is going to be doubled next year. So yeah, just there. I've been here for 8 years, and I know most of you, I think. And let's just keep rocking.
Thanks, Gopi. Last but not least, Anne.
Okay, I started as a teacher. Now I'm an entrepreneur, okay? And the horror I heard from my students about hating school and school being a prison, it horrified me so much that I knew I had to do something about it. So I started off at my dining table 27 years ago. Today we have 3 international schools, but more importantly, we are actually fighting to change the way education is done. And we have to transform the kids. So what we have is a transformational education. And I just saw my ex-student sitting right there. Hi, Eva,
Wow.
Evie. Evie, that's Evie, because twin
Evie.
sisters. Okay, yeah. And more importantly is how to make it relevant to the students. So we've been putting in a lot of very, like we're doing esports in our school. One of our schools is going to be esports. The whole business of esports, not just about playing the game. And one of them is the first entrepreneur school in the country. And we've also added in an environmental school, combining education, environment, and entrepreneurship. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Sure.
Good, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, Anne. I think the panel topic on SME digitalization is a very broad topic. We could go very deep as well when it comes to digitalization for SMEs. Perhaps I think it will be great for Namdu to help us to frame the panel discussion in terms of what exactly is SME digitalization. Perhaps if you could kind of guide us in terms of the context.
Sure.
What does it entail? Whether it requires further enhanced thinking for the SMEs in order to adopt digitalization. They will help us a lot more in the panel discussion.
Sure. That's one of the simplest way to understand this is you just do more technology, but that's not what you intend to do here. I think we started the foundation of why fintechs took a tremendous interest in SME.
Yep.
Because the traditional structure which banks lend to SMEs is based on a very classic, structurally a flawed argument. If you ask any bank. So today when banks decide to lend, they do 2 things. They check intent to pay and ability to pay. Very likely they're going to lend based on ability to pay, very little on the intent to pay. Where there's no credit bureau which says whether the borrower has the intent to pay. And most businesses don't have ability to pay, especially small businesses at the point of interaction. So banks tend to lend very little to them. And today, despite all the technology transformation of SMEs, banks' role in SME financing has been largely disappointing. Very little they play. They all bank the same SMEs day and night. When the SME defaults is actually based on intent to pay, not to ability to pay. So in one hand, you lend based on ability to pay. On the other hand, you have a default and NCL in your books due to intent to pay. So you are denying a lot of people access to credit, and the people who are giving credit are also defaulting because you have no understanding of their intent. This is where fintechs are trying to solve the problem. They're trying to build alternate data models based on intent to pay, with nothing to do with their ability. Based on social indicators, their skill set, and other data set. Because once you lend to somebody based on this other data set, they do get an ability to pay because they do real business. As we just heard somebody from the dining table just made a great company. So that whole, so you had the intent to do something.
Yes.
And that intention is far more capable than, far more definitive than her ability to pay if she ever borrowed from the bank to do her business. So that's the step 1. Structurally, that's what shift is happening. That's where fintechs are focusing on. That's where the real technology comes. The second layer is once these SMEs borrow, how do they interact with the market? And today the market interaction is not physical, it is highly digital. And the access to those network needs real transformation within the firm, both at a skills level, talent level, as well as the capacity to invest within the firm with the technology tools. And the third most, I think perhaps one of the most critical part of the whole SME is no SME thinks small and medium. In fact, there's no idea called small and medium. Every idea is big. It is the physical constraint which makes it small and medium. If that same idea gets into digital space, that idea becomes very powerful. It can become very big businesses. So S and M is a function of how much physical they are. For them to move from S and M to a large enterprise, it is the digital transformation will make that large impact. So that's the 3 areas which we like to look at this whole SME digital transformation. But I want to repeat, because it's the UOB here, the bank here, they've got to change their thinking from looking at ability to pay to intent to pay, and you need a lot of technology, a lot of fintech to support that shift.
Yep, thank you, Sopt, for setting the framework in terms of the three key topics and areas that one should look into when it comes to turbocharge the growth of companies. I think I totally agree that there is no small or medium idea, right? They are big ideas. However, the question is, how could one harness digitalization to break through the boundaries of physical constraint when it comes to ideations and also implementations of the ideas? So this brings me to the next question. So may I address this question to Gopi, right? Obviously, SMEs are the backbone of Malaysia. And in this post-COVID pandemic world, there's even stronger emphasis in ensuring the backbone of the economy of Malaysia can continue to grow amidst various turbulences that we are seeing in the economy today. Gopi, if you could share, what are some of the key initiatives spearheaded by MDAC and also the government of Malaysia to advance the SME digitalization journey? And if you also may share, what are some of the highlights and interesting stories?
Sure. First of all, I want to just address what was said just now. I find banks really funny because they only want to give money and lend money to people who already have money, right? So they're always going for the rich people. And that is a problem statement of the industry. That's the problem statement of the SME. Is, look, I can't get money from the bank because I don't have these documents or I don't have data, right? So it is ironical that so that's where the problem statement is. That's where a lot of fintech companies are trying to disrupt the banks and this way to come in with platforms that are very AI-driven, that make the SME very easy to go and get a loan, fast dispatch. Because in a technology world, if you want to apply for a loan, if you wait 6 months, you're dead, right? Startups will die. So this is where MDAC has intervened. MDAC has intervened in many of these because the SME is the backbone of our economy. And unfortunately, the SME is the last to go and digitize themselves. And it's not unique to Malaysia. It's a global problem. In any economy you see, except to Singapore, because Singapore is a city-state, ours is very complicated. Malaysia has got a very complicated SME or ecosystem that's extremely complicated. You've got to touch East Malaysia, North in Kelantan. Then you've got Penang. It's very different. KL is very different. Johor is very different. So these are the different ecosystems that are operating in different parts of Malaysia, and everyone is very different. So it's very complicated. Number one. Number two, during the lockdown, somehow we all survived, right? People who never used the telephone were able to. My mother was able to do Zoom calls. She was 86, and she was able to do Zoom calls. She was able to purchase some items on the platform. So everybody moved. So we know that when our back is against the wall, we will retaliate. We will come out. Now, the thinking, unfortunately, isn't there in the SME business. The SMEs are digital. They're using social media. But when it comes to their own entire their business, they're scared. They're afraid. So we have, in MDAC, we have various programs. One of it is Dagang. It's Digital Economy Dagang. Dagang is commerce, by the way. And it's the 3rd year running. This is where we bring in Big Pay as a partner as well. This is where we bring in the private sector and government. So government has allocated 150 million. Private sector has allocated 150 million. Together, we are going in on Dagang to ensure that we onboard more companies. We teach how to do commerce on platforms. We give out coupons, rebates, so that it becomes a part of also the government's initiative to reduce the prices of essential items. So this is something that's the 3rd year running, and that's doing quite well. In fact, I think it is the most popular e-commerce initiative by government. And this year alone, we have surpassed a lot of expectations. Our e-commerce platforms have shot through the roof. We have crossed, for the very first time, 1 trillion ringgit worth of e-commerce. So you can see e-commerce moving very fast. Then again, when it comes to the other parts of technology, AI, big data, cyber security, extremely low in adoption. So that's where the problem is. So that's where MDEC's trying to balance this initiatives to help SMEs. So we have got what we call 100 Go Digital. That is a hand-holding exercise to ensure that if you are an SME and you haven't gone digital, then there's a program that's conducted by MDEC there where we will look at it and we will hand-hold you and take you through this digital journey, 100 Go Digital. Then we have got grants. We have got 2 specific grants for SMEs. One is to subsidize a one-on-one for 5,000 ringgit maximum on areas of your business going digital. It could be social media, it could be digital marketing, it could be a CRM, it could be an ERP, simple ERP, and we look into that. Then there is another grant that we call the Smart Automation Grant. That's a bigger grant that is taking parts of your organization and automating it. That one we would match one-on-one up to 200,000 ringgit. And we've got selected partners on board, technical sales partners on board that are helping support some of these initiatives. So these, and then we've got 2 more grants that we just launched. One is the fourth IRCG grant. That's about innovating your SME. It's about if you're able to innovate and as an SME and place Malaysia on the global map, then we invite you to be part of this grant. And also a global growth tech fund grant as well. So these are all the grants that are in place for the SMEs. So we've done quite a lot for the SMEs. Unfortunately, the take-up rate isn't as good as what we expect, and that's because we're not a city-state. We are very complicated. So you can see the take-up in the cities very high. Then when you go to the rural side, it drops, so the average drops, right? So yeah, very quick walkthrough of the problems we have in front of us.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Gopi. If I were to attempt to converge and consolidate the pointers shared by Sopnandu and Gopi, I think there is one common theme in which I would put in this way, right? This is the best of time to be an SME today. Yes, there were many limitations in the past. As an SME, there was physical constraint, there was constraint in terms of technology, there was constraint in terms of resources. And if you are just an SME, you plateau as an SME level. Your annual revenue, your recurring revenue, your growth and your size plateau at a certain level. However, with digitalizations, with technology, with real-time data, these are changing the entire dynamics of the growth of SMEs. And in fact, we are seeing, not just in Malaysia, but Singapore, if you were to look at China, right, how some of these tech companies are powering rural SMEs or MSMEs to grow and leapfrog to major players, a strong force to be reckoned with. So this is where I believe digitalization is such an interesting and dynamic tool for SMEs to harness and also to adopt. So this leads me to my next question to Hui Ming. Thanks for sharing the insights of the report that UOB was involved in producing, ASEAN SME Transformation Study 2022. So if you may share with the audience, looking at the perspectives, what are some of the major differences on this report compared to the previous report that was produced together with UOB as well? Do you think that a COVID pandemic has shifted the dynamic in SME transformation and digitalizations? How has banking services also changed in this regard?
Our last study was done just right at the beginning of COVID, which is 2020 Q1. 3 key differences that we have noted from the last report versus this current one. Number 1 is, again, back to the business sentiments. At the beginning of the pandemic, no surprise, many SMEs very unsure, very pessimistic about the business outlook. If I recall, the numbers should be around 60%, which is very pessimistic. Fast forward to today, Q1, as the market, as the businesses start to live with the endemic, the market start to open up, we have seen more businesses, which is I think 55% of them, become more cautiously optimistic. As if you recall what I have shared earlier, I think some of the SMEs has come out and tell us that beyond their local markets, they are now willing to go overseas to expand fresh perspective and fresh opportunities. So that is something that is on the business sentiments. So they are not just restricting themselves in the local market. Number 2 areas is on sustainability. So sustainability, at that time, very low, nobody talked much about it. So 2 years later, everybody talk about sustainability, talk about energy savings, talk about new business models. So these are the very key difference that we've seen. The third area that is very different is support expected by SMEs from government, from the banks, and from the ecosystem players. In the past report, also very few SMEs feel that they need to be connected. Now, 2 years forward, this is something they talk about. They want to be connected to a whole, the strong network of partners. They will be out there willing to help them, to give them the various business solutions that they cannot get through themselves because they have very limited reach. So those are the key 3 differences that we see from last report versus the current report.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Yep. Thank you, Hui Ming. Earlier on, Sonendu, you mentioned that FinTech has also helped SMEs in their digitalization processes. Salim, being the only FinTech guy in this panel, I have 2 questions for you, right? I always have soft spot for FinTech peers, right? So 2 questions, and I think these 2 questions are significant because digitalization journey is not easy. So if you could share with us your insights on number 1, how has the advancement of FinTech, especially in the past 24 months, helped SMEs in their digitalization journey? And number 2, and I think this would be the more significant question, what are the challenges when it comes to getting SMEs to buy in and to go through the entire digitalization journey enabled by FinTech?
Sure. So I think, firstly, the key bit to kind of highlight is that FinTechs have been efficient, have scaled, and have been able to flourish and grow in segments or, where banks have not been able to service, essentially, right? And fundamentally, it comes down to 2 things: technology, and it comes down to risk. So during this period, what's happened is a bunch of FinTechs have come in, and either some are working with banks, some are lending by themselves. But essentially, they've come up with innovative ways to solve the problem for a particular segment of the economy that wasn't being served, frankly, right? And that made sense, and it flourished, and it grew because you had quantitative easing, you had abundance of cash in the system. And I think that there were a number of different FinTechs that were able to serve segments that banks would not be able to serve. That's the first thing. I think we've seen that in Malaysia. We've seen that across Southeast Asia, across the board, right? So that's that. I think the next bit here is that there's a bunch of challenges, but I think we need to segment SMEs into 2. And I think, so you mentioned, it was a good point that you said, right? So no one wants to be small or medium. Everyone wants to be large, right? Like no one says, oh, I want to be a small business today, right? But everyone is a small business at one point, and everyone is a medium business at some point, right? So kind of, the challenges are not necessary, but they're all extremely different in what they do. For example, you have a mamak store somewhere, for example, what they need is wildly different to a startup, right? So, and their market being, let's say they're doing digital distribution, is also very different. Like, so do I need a PayNet, do it now QR code? Or do I need, rails to be able to buy goods overseas and make a margin as I sell them, right? So the biggest challenge is that as FinTechs are scaling themselves, we need to be very niche, and I think FinTechs need to be very niche about the problems that they're solving. At the same time, you have banks that are coming in and offering, they're digitizing, bankers in the room, like no one's sleeping, right? Like everyone's kind of moving along this path. And more of the segments that we feel comfortable with, whether it's FinTechs or the banks, are being served, but it will take time because no one can solve this problem, immediately. So I think that the biggest challenge will be how do we tackle more, how do we access more, and it will be a mindset shift in terms of how banks view risk, and it will be in terms of how FinTechs, what segments that they feel comfortable going into as well.
Thank you, Salim, for the insights. And I will now shift the discussion to the business operator herself, to the SME founder herself, and you run a successful business Ace Adventure. Could you share with us and also the SMEs in the audience from the first-hand experience perspective when you decided to adopt digitalization in your journey, what were your challenges and how did you overcome them?
Okay, thank you very much. I think first and foremost, Gopi, I'm going to come and see you soon. You said there are grants nobody is taking up, or not many are taking
grants
up.
to be given up.
Yeah, we'll come and see you soon. Okay, the second thing is, I was pondering why I'm here, okay? And what is it that I can share with you that you can take away from? And I guess the main thing is that being a very, very traditional business, moving into a digital space, perhaps I can share that part of it, okay? So first of all is the selling. Now, when everything went online, okay, and people were buying from Lazada, from eBay and all that, I'm a school, right? We run schools. We don't, like, you use the product, you pay for the product, immediately you get, people send to you the product, all right? And you make payment. Ours is like, the students are with me month after month after month. So what service is there for me to go online in order for, because the traditional payment didn't suit us. So it was very, very different. And we were like trying to figure out how to get into this new world of payments. And well, I must say, because the bank stepped in and, you know, you have that easy payment thing where, you know, the parents commit for the whole year. And then not only that, we get our monthly, you pay us a whole month and the parents are billed monthly. Okay, that was really brilliant because it took away this issue of, you see, the kids are in our classes, right? You can't kick them out. They're there for years. Whereas if you don't make payment, then you don't buy, right? It's a whole different ballgame altogether. But now with that kind of system in place, we get it regularly on the same day every month. Okay, so that was a game changer, but it took a few years for us to get to that point. The second one is looking at the traditional business. We're a school. We have run 3 schools. You know, when the whole pandemic hit, forget about even thinking about going online. We are like, I have 3 schools with a commitment of 3 rental payments. One of them is at $500,000 ringgit a month. You just imagine the horror of it. And when the pandemic just kept moving forward and it got you know, stretched longer and longer, most companies started to downsize their spaces, you know, their rental spaces. We couldn't do that because our licenses are tied to it, right? But having said that, we went online the first day of the MCO, okay? When people were just trying to figure out what to do for a few weeks, the first day of MCO, we literally went online. And we stayed online until the end, and we didn't even cut down the number of hours spent online. We were there the entire day. Our swimming classes were going on. You know, literally people are asking, swimming classes going on? Yes, swimming classes went on. You know, literally everything had to go on. But what we got out of it is that, you know what, we cannot stay offline. We literally have to figure a way to go online because we cannot afford another pandemic like what we experienced recently. So, you know, one push, one pull. So we are now actually looking very seriously into playing online in a very, very different space, the metaverse. Yeah, I know people are talking about it, but we're going to push that boundary as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Anne, for sharing your
Thank you.
War stories on the ground. Yeah, Gopi is very approachable. And your sharing resonates very well with a recent closed-door roundtable session which was taken place on last Friday. So the FinTech Association of Malaysia, together with the Central Bank of Malaysia, we organized a digital motor claims ecosystem workshop. So there were 4 tech companies which were invited to present their tech solutions to a group of C-level of general insurers. And obviously, the 4 tech companies were presenting on their tech solutions in terms of digitalizing the entire motor claims processes in Malaysia. So if you were to refer to the latest Bank Negara Financial Sector Blueprint 2022 to 2026, page 73, there's actually a illustration which demonstrates the commitment of the regulator and different industry players to digitalize the process. Obviously, the motor claims process involves different spectrum across the value chain. It's not just the adjuster who is at play, it's not just the insurance companies, there are workshops, there are the customers themselves, there are the tow trucks players who are also involved. And from that session, what we have learned is that digital tool and digitalization is not one-size-fits-all solutions. It's like just exactly what Anne you have just shared, right? You need to go on the ground to get feedback, to do multiple iterations, to do different pivoting. But what is crucial is the localization, the local know-how, the market know-how, the product know-how, the customer know-how will be very effective and important. And digitalization, if I hear you correctly, is just a tool. It's just an enabler to ensure that the entire processes are made more efficient. And thank you for sharing that. So this leads me to ask questions to the regulator, in our panel, right? So being the regulator and the CFO, the Chief FinTech Officer in MAS, could you share with us, what are some of the initiatives that MAS and of course Vandi has spearheaded and has helped SMEs to advance to the next level?
Sure. Well, as I was saying that when you look at SMEs today from a fintech perspective, we look at how to get SMEs access to finance. Mm-hmm. That's almost like a foundational thinking for us from a regulatory standpoint. What facilitates that process? Now, to do that, you got to put a lot of policies and technology to create a wider sense of data set so that this data becomes part of the banks or the fintechs credit decisioning process. So there is a lot of policy support thinking. And one of the things we have started, not only in Singapore, but also at our market outside, we just started rolling out with Ghana in Africa, and one with Philippines. We are just starting a discussion to create a cross-border corridor for small and medium businesses to have access to trusted data set, so that with that trusted data set, they can have access to finance from the banks. And also, most interesting is one sector, these SMEs, they don't need banks for financing. They actually can finance themselves from the corporates directly. It's the same set of data set, if you can make it available across as a common utility, SMEs can get the finance directly from the buyers, from the corporate treasury account. Why need to go to a bank? Yep. So that ability for small businesses to access a wider sources of finance using this public data set, which demonstrates both intent and ability, will become a big, I will say, progress in this sector from my perspective as a policymaker and as a regulator here. The second piece is on the payment side, because small and medium business payments is far more complicated than an individual payment. Yep. It involves a lot of processes, trust accounts, cross-border payments. So how do we solve for that? And I think that's a sector which payment companies fintechs are doing a remarkable job. Yep. I think, and also the G2G partnership between countries are coming to play. Malaysia and Singapore are going to connect the respective payment system by end of this year or early next year. Our Pay Now and Do It Now are getting connected. Singapore is already connected to Thailand. India is getting connected this year. So you will see a lot of these countries' domestic payment system will get connected, which will allow then fintech companies like BigPay use that infrastructure to build solutions for businesses to pay money each other across the border and also in domestic market. There's a second layer. The third piece, which I think is our, from a policy standpoint, is our concern, is how to improve the financial literacy program. Because we got to ensure that the businesses and the staff and the ecosystem do understand financial literacy as part of their thinking. And that's not easier said than done, because you got to put a lot of this content in a way the small and medium businesses do have access to this content. So we are putting a lot of effort in partnership with many multilateral agencies to promote digital literacy across different markets. And just to square off this from a policy standpoint, which may not be a classic banking regulator issue, but more a broader national tech regulatory issue, is to how to build 4 foundational infrastructure, which is critical for small businesses to ride on. First, you need to have a trusted national digital corporate IDs. I'm not talking about individual IDs, because this is almost crucial for businesses to operate in a digital economy to have a trusted digital ID.
Yep.
Second, a highly interoperable payment system, which I think we are addressing now by not only in domestic market, plus also connecting to countries across different jurisdictions. Third, which I think perhaps will be crucial for the success of this small and medium businesses, is to have access to trusted data set. How can we build a series of national utility which will allow businesses to push for data or create digital footprint, and also this data are trusted in a way banks or corporate treasury can use this data to increase finances and other services to the small and businesses. And the fourth one is more principle. We got to ensure every business or participating in the digital economy have right to consent how people use the data. And that consent mechanism should be inculcated as a part of the design thinking, and that's part of the public infrastructure which is required for an end state if you want to make SMEs as a sector completely digitized to this, completely digitized to address their scale growth. And of course, issues like cyber and all are kind of parallel construct of policy which will continue to flow through. I think that's broadly is where our focus is, and I think to me, foundationally speaking, we got to improve our ability to create better credit process for our small businesses. Banks will alone not able to solve the problem. It's a corporate treasury who has to come in, and to do that, you need that shift in our thinking of increasing the data element for ability to pay. I hope there are many fintechs here who can play a crucial role in creating the data set for us.
Thank you, Sok. Yeah, this is a call to participate for the fintech players. I think you have emphasized a lot on the open finance data access, yes. Different data points which can be accessed by different tech players, fintech companies, even banks, to really facilitate the digitalization process.
And we don't have to necessarily rely on banks to open finance. Corporate treasury can cover 80% of the finance need in the market.
Exactly.
So you don't have to depend on banks for any access to finance for this, especially for businesses.
That's right. That's right. And Gopi, just now you were mentioning that obviously for the SME space in Malaysia is a little bit more complicated with the rural-urban divide. And Sok was mentioning about the importance of literacy in getting the buy-in from these players. So for the local context, how has MDEC or how has the government been helping these SMEs more in a rural setting in adopting digitalizations?
Yeah, unfortunately, there hasn't been an easy way to do it. We had to go down to the ground level, and we worked with partners. We worked with a lot of, someone's pointing the time at me. We worked with policy, a lot of partners. We went down, went into rural areas. We ran programs about moving to digital and how you do it, and then have assistance, financial assistance as well. But without partners, we couldn't have done it. So it was a private-public initiative that's now working very well, including moving them to QR codes, moving them to online, even online banking was a chore, moving them over to online banking and apps. And so that's all being done the rural side. The urban side, we're very comfortable already. And I think, yeah, so those are some of the things. The other thing that's changing landscape is, and it's changing landscape for banking as well, is everything is going to the gig economy. In Malaysia alone, we expect a million people already on the gig economy, and that's moving a lot of things. So gig economy means that you're probably working in Singapore, but you're based here in Malaysia. And so we're seeing those kind of numbers coming in. We have trained 67,000 gig workers that have generated an income of more than 250 million in the last 4 years. So we can see that as well moving, so that's also coming in from the rural side as well. So they probably sitting in Kota Baru somewhere, but they're a gig worker in the US or in Singapore. So that's also changing the dynamic. So that's also helping us drive adoption in the rural side.
Right. Thanks, Gopi. And I will next point this question to Hui Ming. How is a bank like UOB helping smaller businesses in the area of sustainability? Just now you were mentioning about sustainability in your sharing and also in the report as well. And I understand that UOB Malaysia has also recently hired a Chief Sustainability Officer, CSO, not Chief Sales Officer, right? Chief Sustainability Officer, which is equally important, if not more. So my question would be, how do you see that the adoptions or the buy-in among the smaller companies, the SMEs, when it comes to adopting the entire sustainability concept? Because after all, for the larger conglomerates, they are more bound to accept the ESG framework and whatnot because they have the resources, they have the capabilities. However, for SMEs, whereby the year-end revenue generating is crucial for their survival and also sustainability, how would the entire take-up be like in your perspective?
Okay, thanks. I think later on we will actually have a session purely on sustainability. So I will just lightly touch on that. From the study, we do know that a lot of SMEs want to get involved. And we also know that SMEs is a part of a broader and wider value chain of a large corporate. So as corporates go and wants to adopt sustainability, there will be a flow-down impact onto the SMEs. So that's where education will be important. And where UOB comes in is we have developed the sustainability framework that actually provide a one-stop approach for all the SMEs who wants to take over and become sustainable. We help them to perform initial assessment on what is their sustainability needs. We help them identify what is needed to be qualified for sustainable financing. Third, we have many solutions that actually will be able to help them to get the necessary fundings. An example is U Energy. So U Energy is a drive to actually help the customers who wants to develop as well as and adopt energy efficient projects. We also have U Solar programs that actually help people to adopt solar. So we have many more. So I think for the purpose of this, I will actually leave it to the next panel to cover more details. Otherwise, yeah.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Hui Ming. In fact, as we engage with our members in the FinTech Association, there is a growing number of investors, VCs, right? Before they invest into FinTech startups, and many of these are growth stage companies, so naturally they fit into the SME category, right? They will issue a ESG checklist as part of the due diligence as well. And
Listen, can I make a small short pitch for the fintechs on sustainability? Just 30 seconds. I don't want to make. He still has to make a lot of money.
Sure.
If payment companies are progressively going to will struggle in making money because the margins are getting squeezed. If one industry in the fintech subsector who is going to make big money in sustainability are the payments fintech, because you hold 80% of the data which is required by the banks for this small businesses to prove their sustainable KPIs. So if you can use your data set, pivot your business to figure out how to support the small businesses for sustainability reporting, I think you're going to make a lot of money out of that. And so if there's one opportunity, grab it right now.
Good. How would you like to respond to this?
No, look, I mean, I think sustainability is a key, obviously. I mean, I think it's the hot topic, and there's a lot of capital flowing into this space as well. I think every business is going to have to think about sustainability. I think you talk about us whipping to give data for reporting. We have to give our reporting as well. Like our investors.
At least you see what they're buying and selling.
Yeah, exactly.
So have the insights.
Yeah. No, for sure. And so I think it's extremely relevant. We're doing it in two ways. One, for our consumers as well. So we're ensuring that we can enable our consumers to be sustainable, but also at the same time making sure we as a business can provide the data as well.
Sure. In the interest of time.
Ensure banks pay you for that.
Yeah, of course. I don't do anything for free.
To make sure that the business is sustainable.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, we only have 4 minutes left before we end the session. I just would like to invite all of the panelists to give a last word for this session. How would you imagine or how would you define the success when it comes to SME digitalizations? So perhaps, Anne, I'll start from you.
Okay, for me it would be a seamless online and offline business. Okay, if we can get to that, it will be fantastic, because I know if you have just an online business, it could disappear very quickly too, and you need to have that balance of both online and offline. We can make it seamless. Yeah.
Thanks, Anne.
I very much agree with what Anne says. It's very difficult to measure, and I think if you're able to measure SMEs going smaller and smaller and smaller, but revenues are increasing because they're using digital platforms. That's one measurement of doing that. Secondly, if you look at SMEs that are doing global businesses right here, that means that's also working because then they are plugged into platforms, right? E-commerce platforms. And so now the entire supply chain is all connected onto platforms. So the more SMEs get onboarded, so that's part of the My Digital Blueprint agenda is to onboard and move 875,000 SMEs onto the platforms. And that's something that we're doing, working very hard on that.
For us, it's very clear. For SME, we strongly suggest that in order to really measure the success of digital transformation, each SME owners must set very clear criteria before they enter into any digital journey. After that, it's all about tracking the implementation, measuring the revenue, measuring and monitoring the review. And if we achieve all the areas that they have set out for the SME owners, I would think that is considered a success. So we also talk about 4 areas that SMEs really want to look into when it comes to digitalization, which is the marketing piece, the customer engagement, the process efficiency, as well as network management. So whichever agenda they set, the KPI they set, if they achieve it, I would say it's successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
So just like taking it down, I'll split it into 2. One is access to solutions in terms of how I would measure success, and the next one is like people having the literacy to use it and educated understanding how to do it, right? The first thing is on solutions, like, I mean, what do they want? Like people want credit. People want to be able to conduct their sales. And the last thing they want to be able to do is and you can do that a few different ways. You can increase demand on the consumer side, and you've seen like a huge amount of BNPL platforms that have launched as well that are basically doing it doing credit the other way around. And they want business, they want credit to be able to scale their operations. The next thing, solutions is they want to access larger markets. If you look at a small SME, like let's say a gig economy worker, for example, a knowledge worker that's selling overseas, for example, and sitting in Malaysia, that's an export in many ways, right? And that knowledge export is extremely valuable. So being able to access markets. The next thing is on education. Like if we can make sure that we're not just dumping solutions into the market, but helping people use them and use them effectively, I think that will really be the barometer of uptake and success.
Thanks, Salim. So.
Well, they have covered almost everything, but I'll do one thing. Wei Ming was showing that slide study.
Yeah.
I think the second slide, you're showing the survey showing how businesses are responding on digital transformation. In fact, if you look at the chart, the last one, which was perhaps the process slide, was less than 50%. I think that's where the problem lies. If she has to show a progress from today to next year, that should flip to the first one, which means more SMEs should think about investing on the process side, because unless you get your digital footprint right, the rest is not possible, whether finance to transformation to connecting to global network. So I hope one way to measure success in the next survey, that whole response should have other way around, and the last one should be the first one.
So we look forward to 2023,
Yes.
World FinTech Festival.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, sure. So with that, thank you so much for all the panelists with your nuggets of wisdom. With that, I also thank the organizer, Alavandi, and also UOB for providing the space. And we look forward to the next engaging session and also the next networking session that follows after that.
And do join us at the festival at the Singapore. I have to do that as a chairman of Alavandi. And if you are a programmer, it is free for you, okay? So we have made a special discount for programmers, free.
The Alavandi team is here as well. I think you can speak to them.
Thank
right,
you.
with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I want to make another call for everyone to close up the gaps in between the seats. We have a very packed, cozy environment today. And then let's see if we can get as many people as possible on the seats. So once again, it's a fantastic panel for our first session, especially talking about SMEs as well as digitalization. Something interesting, and the crew here could call me out for is the word sustainability was used 27 times throughout the whole panel earlier. So it was a 45-minute session, and every 2 minutes, someone mentioned the word sustainability. In our next fireside chat, we'll go deep dive into the idea of green and inclusive growth, which is a key part of our conversations around sustainability. I'd like to pass the time over to our second session, led by Ms. Melissa Moy, who is Head of Sustainable Finance UOB, who will be kickstarting this fireside chat. Melissa, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm actually going to invite Kamar to come sit up with me already. He'll be joining me on this fireside chat. So before we start, I recognize that this is a FinTech session, and we just went through a really fascinating session on digitalization. But I'm a little bit old school, so we're going to do a bit of a quiz survey of the audience, and I'm going to ask you to use the other digital, your hands, and raise your hands as I'm going to answer these questions. Only 5 questions. There won't be a quiz afterwards on this. So, how many of you have sustainability as a priority in your organization? Raise your hands. Okay, not bad. UOB folks, you better all have your hands raised. How many of you have an action plan and concrete goals? Raise your hands. Again, UOB folks, be raising your hands. How many of you are measuring the impact of your sustainability plans? Okay, the numbers are getting a little bit smaller. How many of you have declared net zero? We've got 3 hands in the crowd. How many of you came primarily to hear the session on digitalization and don't really care about sustainability? All right, so just to give you a sense that you know, as Hui Ming said, that there are about 65-ish% of SMEs that are thinking about sustainability. But it's not necessarily something that is ingrained in your day-to-day conversation. So today's session, I have the lovely Kamar with me today. I'm going to just give you the brief 5-minute big trends on sustainability that we're hearing from a global perspective. And then I want to dive a little bit deeper into specifically from an SME and a Malaysia perspective, why this is important and what tools SMEs can be thinking about as they move along in the sustainability journey. So the 3 big issues that we're really hearing about from a sustainability perspective are number 1, net zero. So there are only 2 or 3 of you in this entire room who raised your hands that you've made this commitment to net zero. Now, most of you, if you open up your newspapers, understand and read this concept that the world must be net zero carbon emissions by 2050 if we are going to be able to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So there is a need for the world to have our emissions by 2030. Half our emissions by 2030. 2030 is not that far away from here. This is not an issue for our children's generation. This is an issue for our generation. And so net zero is something that companies are talking about, multinational corporations are talking about, asset managers, asset owners, countries. Malaysia has made a declaration to be net zero by 2050. Singapore has made a declaration to be net zero at or around the mid-century. So this is a key concept that people are talking about. And so for the SMEs in the room, this is something that will be more and more relevant when it comes to how you're looking at your businesses. And it's not enough to just declare net zero. The next big piece is really on data and reporting. So Sup talked about all the fintechs. If you decided to look at this concept of data and be able to transform all of this, you know, fintech information and data that you have, particularly on small businesses, how useful it would be from a banking perspective. But I'll add another element to that. So it's not just about, number 1, if you build it, will they come? Number 2, it's also about the quality of the data and whether or not we can actually be sure it's real. Greenwashing is a massive issue that companies, that stakeholders are talking about. So it's not just enough to have good intentions. It really is about how do you measure? how do you assure and how do you ensure that whatever sustainability data that you are reporting is verifiable and is accurate? And data is a massive piece of the conversation where there is a huge opportunity. There is a big gap, and that does need to be filled, particularly from an SME perspective. Just to give you a sense, UOB has, as a large listed company, has folks like myself, has folks like Maureen who can focus on sustainability. But if you're an SME and you're focused on keeping the lights on, running your business, you don't necessarily have that same resource to be able to devote. The third major challenge and trend that we're hearing about is really on supply chain. And we alluded to this fact that even if you don't have shareholders and you don't have institutional investors who are knocking on your door and asking you about your net zero commitment, you certainly have clients and customers who do. And so I always sort of say, even if you're an SME and you don't have all these reporting requirements yet, every SME is some major MNC's Scope 3 emissions. You are somebody's greenhouse gas emission that somebody is going to have to report. And so those questions will start, they will increase, they will ask you, number one, can you measure? Number two, can you report? And number three, what are you doing to actually reduce those emissions in order to meet that net zero target? So these are the three big things we're hearing about from a more sort of global macro perspective. But I also understand that it can be a bit of a large theoretical conversation. And when it comes down to the day-to-day operations of an SME, it can be a bit difficult. So we're lucky enough to have Kumar here from the Malaysia Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. And he's been working for a number of years on really helping SMEs make this transition to green. So Kumar, why don't you tell us a little bit about what MGTC does to support green adoption and particularly green tech adoption?
Thank you. Thank you again, Melissa. By the way, MGTC, perhaps some of you are not aware what is this MGTC is all about. It is actually an agency under the Ministry of Environment and Water. So we are a specific agency being the conduit for government to promote green technology in the first place when it was set up back in 2010. Now we are looking into climate change. Okay, basically we are implementing agency for some of the initiative promoted by Malaysian government. When we talk about greenhouse gas, when we talk about climate change, okay, I would like to touch a little bit whether we have the understanding about where we are now as far as greenhouse gas is concerned. Then we'll talk about sustainability. Okay, Malaysia, on average, yeah, we are releasing about 7 over ton per capita. So we have 30 over million in terms of population. Individually, we take as an average, we release about 7 over ton per year per person. So that's a lot. But let's look dive a little bit personally, individually. Most of us we drive cars. Okay, on average, if you drive between 40 to 50 kilometers per day, which means throughout the year, we release about 2 tons of GHG from our cars. So that's a lot. How much is 1 ton? But we are releasing 2 tons per cars per year. How much? If you can imagine the hot air balloon, that is approximately about 1 ton. So in Malaysia, we have passenger cars. We just focus on passenger cars. We have close to 14 million passenger cars. That's a lot. Times 2 tons per car, 28 million. This hot air balloon covered our sky. That is only coming from cars. So it's a huge impact if we don't seriously look into whether sustainability, whether we want to be part of this sustainability or not. Because if you cannot imagine, because gas, we don't see gas. But that's how I give you a picture. We ourselves contribute to this 2 tons per year, individually. We don't look at all the public transport yet. That's why now a lot of initiative being promoted by government, seriously looking into sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, we look into the
of course, the economic aspect of it, of course, the environmental impact of it, and of course, the social part of it. So when we talk about sustainability, these are the three areas that you cannot run away. So that's how I look at it. If we hope that SMEs will actually seriously look into sustainability as part of agenda and focus and benefit from, the country will benefit from it, basically.
When we were talking before, you mentioned the MGTC. One of the big things that you have been doing is providing grants. So helping companies make this transition, invest in the capital, to get the capital to invest in the technology they need. But you also mentioned of the 85% of the grants you give, they are to SMEs, which is great. But most of them come via consultants who tell the SMEs they should do this. So what are the barriers that SMEs are facing in this space? Why aren't they applying en masse? Why aren't they making this transition?
Okay, we are very close to SME Association and FMM. SME Association, they declare they have about 10,000 members. When we talk about sustainability and green, basically they have no idea that government have actually, since 2009, seriously looking into this space for Malaysia. They have no idea that government have actually given so much incentive, subsidized financing, guaranteeing the loan. For instance, Malaysian government have actually, they call it Green Technology Financing Scheme. 5.5 billion have been actually disbursed. I'm not sure, maybe some of you have never heard about this. This is actually borrowing guaranteed by government. You can actually, SME can actually go to any financial institution. We have a program, and then being subsidized the interest rate, and government guarantees 60% of the borrowing. So in the case of the project turned into NPL, government covered 60% of your loan. So, but unfortunately, 5.5 billion, I mentioned about 5.5 billion being disbursed. Only 400 over companies benefit from it. There's a lot more out there that need support. And then you look at the approved numbers, but look at the non-approved numbers. This is where, when I would like to relate to banking sectors. 400 over companies that benefit from this. You know how many that did apply to benefit from this? More than 2,000 companies applied. See the ratio? Number of application and then the number of that really receive the support from banking sectors under this program. So we need more support from banks. So one of the issue, going sustainability, going green, financial support. Most of the company, they want to go into green sectors, sustainability, but they don't have enough support, especially funding. So this is one of the, I would say, if you look into studies, they highlight, but you can see this is actually a serious issue. Companies want to go into sustainability and green, but they don't receive enough support from the financial sectors.
Are you finding that of those numbers, are they mainly startups? Or are these companies who are looking at new green technologies? Because, I mean, in the banking sector, we often talk about sort of risk, right? So the risk that comes with investing in unknown technology or new green technologies. Are we talking about existing SMEs who are looking to then transition their companies or invest in the technology needed to decarbonize their company?
Based on that 2,000 application that we receive, I would say 70% these are all existing company. Existing company, but they want to embark into green sectors. They want to expand their business. They want to go into sustainability. They want to invest into renewable energy. They want to install solar on their rooftop. They want to go into co-generation as part, or not to supply for their plant. These are all existing companies. They have track record, financial record. But yet, when I talk to bankers, we have 28 banks that participate under that program. One of the things, when we talk about whether this is a history between 2010 until 2020, because that program, we implemented over more than 10 years. So basically, most of the banks, when any application goes for this scheme, they got turned down by the applicant goes to the bank and been turned down. And then most of the time, a reason given, we don't cover this area of business. We don't have any expert to look into this project. So this is actually common reason that we receive from the applicant. Bank officers do not have the knowledge how to evaluate energy efficient project, or even how to evaluate biogas project, or even how to evaluate cogen project. These are all basic. Of course, if you don't have the know-how to evaluate those projects, so definitely you will not be able to support. Though that in general, those banks that have the know-how, they have technical team to evaluate. Actually, it's a very straightforward project, and then very minimal. The risk is very small to banks. But if you don't know, which means you cannot support. Yeah.
If I may make a plug,
Yeah.
they should all be calling Hui Ming, because at UOB we do have
Yeah.
specific framework supporting SMEs to be able to access this type of funding in a very simple way, because we recognize that the ecosystems need to come together in order to drive this change. So taking a step back, and you've evaluated thousands of applications. For those SMEs in the room who are looking to embark, who none of them raised their hands when we asked if they had made commitments to sustainability. What are some of the key actions? How can somebody who's starting off, think about this and integrating it into their business plan?
When we talk about sustainability, as I mentioned just now, we look into the economic aspect, we look into environment aspect, we look into the social aspect. These are the three key areas. But when we talk about whether any projects or any operation is worthwhile to support or not, from the banking perspective, of course, you're looking into the cash flows, whether, coming back to the earlier discussion, you are lending based on capacity to pay rather than commitment to pay. This is go back to the earlier what was discussed earlier. So of course we have received quite, as I said, about 30%. These are all new set up company. They have less than 3 years in terms of their history. Of course, most of the bank will not support this kind of project. But some of these them really want to go into sustainability project. Okay, when we talk about the areas that we support, this is actual projects, not really in services sector. But of course, we do support services sector that go into green. For instance, we have one specific program. We call it ESG. Energy Management Gold Standard. This is actually to encourage companies' operation to be more efficient, to be in terms of their energy efficiency. They are being graded based on whether they get 1 star, 2 star, or 3 star. It's not only looking into energy savings, but the entirety of their operation. So they are being graded. So of course, there is no monetary given by government, but to kickstart for them to participate, government will subsidize the audit being conducted. Okay, you want to participate in this under this program, government will spend the money and audit your operation. Then from there, advice is being given, being designed. How can you participate under this program to be more sustainable in terms of your operation, in terms of your energy usage, into your waste management, into your water? That's basically some of the big area where we talk about whether companies should go or not. Of course, some of the small companies, it's very tough to say. We're looking into the normal traditional business, manufacturing, things like that. But of course, services sector also, they can actually involve into sustainability, basically.
So energy management, energy efficiency, wastewater, management, all of those types of things. Quite easy steps, right, in terms of the sort of transition of your business. when you see these companies that are able to implement these types of programs, what are some of the key features of the companies that have the leadership buy-in or are able to make this pivot? Any success stories that you want to talk about from the last decade?
Okay, I take into example leaders, within the organization is important. Most of the time, when we call, we conduct a seminar, things like that, talk about sustainability, some of the initiative being promoted by government. Most of the time, when we extend our invitation to companies, they send their junior officers, they send to their finance executive, things like that. Those information, when we relay to during all these conferences, more often than not, will not go into their bosses. They receive those information, that's it, and then nothing come back. We tell the audience about the incentive that we're offering. So we don't receive any feedback from all these companies because more often than not, if any company were to go into sustainability, it must come from the top. Then they will execute it and have a proper KPI to achieve, proper plan. It must come from the top. If I were a small officer, a manager into one company, if I want to promote this, my boss will not listen to this. I don't know what are you talking about. So the bosses, the CEOs, the MD of companies, even the CFO, must come from the top management. But more often than not, bosses don't know anything about this. It's sad, but that's what's happening. Because we've been calling a lot of conferences, years after years. We have programs, call them to attend a free conference, give them food somehow, because to attract them to come. But we can see the turn up junior officers, and then those information don't go to their leaders. So it's sad to say we need more commitment from the company, which means directly from the stakeholders to ensure that really we want to go really sustainability, and then must come from the top.
Right.
Yeah.
So leadership must not just say it's a priority, but know and understand the technical sides of it, because it can get very technical. If you need the support, MGTC, we are there. We are here to support. Technical support, advisory, these are all free. You should come and see us. So, but you most of the time, some of the, especially the M company, the M company, they have achieved a certain level already, millions in terms of their turnover. They normally like to engage the big four consultant. I say, when coming back to all these consultants just now, to end up in-house, most of their staff don't know anything about. So they talk to consultant A, consultant B. So the company itself, they don't really live into green or understand what is sustainability all about. So it's only the consultant who prepare all the working paper, but the company have no idea. Okay, boss, this proposal to be submitted to banks, things like that. Okay, please sign here. So that is what happened. When we call them, normally it's like that, for us to evaluate those projects, we call the boss. Boss, your signature, would like to explain. Oh, you need to talk to my consultant. It's not even their officer, consultant outside. So we have the same consultant process 50 to 100 applications. See, it's very sad to say, but the company just couldn't care less. They just pay the consultant, okay. Of course, the documentation is good because of it prepared well by the consultant. But the company, they have no idea what is sustainability is all about, how to really go green, things like that. So I'm not sure how to do this wake-up call. I'm not sure. Just now you show me some statistics. I think too good to be true to a certain extent. It's very big numbers. Very big numbers. I would say, okay, I give you an example. If you really want to go for sustainability, there's a framework, ISO 14001,
very straightforward. It's internationally accepted. So this framework, everybody can follow. Environmental management, system. So you can practice this. I mean, you don't need to follow any of my program. ISO 14001. Okay. All companies implement this. They have their framework. Everybody follow. But actually, of the numbers of, just now you showed, it's very surprising lah. We have a very small number of SME that really have taken ISO 14001. Very small, not even 10% of the number of SME in Malaysia. Not even 10%. So
But
maybe they want to, those number want to do, but they have not done it.
And that's the key, right? Because
Yeah.
it's intention, but then there's action, and there's measurement, and there's impact. So taking a step back, what do ecosystems players need to do? So you've got some regulators in the room, you've got SMEs in the room, you've got financial services in the room.
Okay.
I mean, we've got in Malaysia commitment to hit net zero by 2050.
Okay.
And the starting point is relatively high. There's some pretty high emitting sectors that are quite big here. So what do these players need to do? How do we change those leaders to go from, I just get a consultant to do it for me to get the grant, to fundamentally saying, of the 65%, 67% who believe this is a key business imperative, that translates to changing and transitioning my company. So what governments, regulators, financial institutions, what are the big things that need to change?
Okay. Government have actually kickstart the central government. I'm not sure whether you have heard about it. GGP. Anybody heard about GGP? So, even bankers don't know what GGP is. That's the problem. Government green procurement. So government have actually kickstart. Government have actually imposed on themselves 20% of government procurement budget, that yearly government procurement budget, must go for green product and services. So indirectly we're telling the industry, okay, government are serious about sustainability, about green. 20% of government budget will go for green products and services. So which means you are telling the industry, why don't you go green? Why don't you go produce green product and services? So government have been doing it since 2015. Sad to say, the achievement was very small. You know why? Not enough local company produce green products and services. More often than not, when you talk about greenwashing, some of these companies import products from overseas, not even being certified properly. It's not even properly certified, accredited, whatever. So government can actually seriously going into, you're talking about yearly, about 80 over billion now. If government, talking about the procurement side, products, services for their office operation. So now we are planning to embark into private green procurement. So bringing all the Bursa company come into this, and GLCs, GLICs. So, because it seems that, so we need the support from the industry. We need companies to go green. If they don't produce any green products, if they don't certify their products, how can government buy their products? So the government have actually created a demand. 80 over billion from all this. But you know how much is the yearly now?
How much?
Of the 80 over billion, supposedly, you know how much?
2 billion.
Wow! If it can, touch billions, it's not even touch billion. Okay. Few hundred million, as opposed to 80 billion. So, if you don't
SMEs in the crowd, did you hear that? Massive opportunity. Yeah, just get yourself certified, change your business models, all good. Yeah.
So, produce green products, provide green services, register your products properly, whether eco-labeling or you fulfill certain criteria as far as green is concerned. So you can actually go and supply to the government. Huge demand for it. And then you have a niche market. Now, not that many players. So I'm not sure. We have been telling the industry, talk to FMM, talk to SME Association. As I said, government have this. Why don't you enter into green space and produce green product and services? What? You know what was one of the reasons given? Too costly to go into green. Okay, it's true enough. Why? Why too costly? If you, okay, I take into example, you have a glass that you produce, oh, this product is green, okay? A glass that you produce, but who certified this is green? You need it to be certified. To get it certified, you know how much that you need to pay? To get it certified? A glass, one product. Give it a try? How much? Okay, too much. Slightly lower. Okay. But for one product, 5,000 to 20,000, sometimes it's more. Slightly highly, high-tech product, it goes to up to 200,000 just to get it certified. That really costs money. So that's why most of the time when talk about why don't you produce green product?
Too costly.
Too costly. So banks, UOB, support your client, give them some working capital. This is a special fund to do product certification. Spread over a period of time just for this. So they can get their products properly certified. Once they are certified, they can actually go abroad, beyond Malaysian market. So you must support them. But if you say, hey, what is this for? They have no choice but to take up some of their working capital, loan just to pay for this, and then they, but you, why don't you? 200,000 is a lot just for one certification. But if you spread over 10 years, for instance, I'm not sure, all right. So,
but we also see that there are government incentives as well.
Yes.
For certification to get the standard up.
We hope this coming budget on the 7th, there'll be some good news, because we have actually put certain recommendation to support, among others. But of course, it will not be 100%. Certain percentage, government plan to support, because they want more companies to go produce green products and it goes into sustainability.
There is a bit of a chicken and egg, right?
Yeah.
And it does take that initial investment to then be able to then grow your business, and you need to have access to that initial capital.
Yeah.
One of the big conversations that we're often hearing about from an ASEAN perspective that goes back to net zero is this concept of a just transition. So you talked a little bit about, within MGTC, you also consider the sort of social sustainability of it. So switching gears a little bit, but a bit related. What's your view on this concept of just transition, particularly in ASEAN? And for those of you who don't know in the crowd, this is the concept that's been floating around, particularly since COP26, that those emerging markets cannot necessarily be required to decarbonize at the same rate as markets that are much more mature, that have the ability to pay for the expensive technologies that can actually ensure that there's equal access to energy and growth. So from your perspective, how do you think about this, and what's the role that a just transition plays within the Malaysian context?
Okay. One of the area is actually to encourage companies to go green, or rather, you have no choice but to go green to be efficient. Okay, this is it's no longer giving you the grace period. Now, government are serious. They have been holding it back for the past 6, coming to 7 years. Government have actually drafted Energy Efficient and Conservation Act, expected to be announced this year or first quarter of next year. Malaysia is the only country that have not actually have this act. Singapore have it, Thailand have it, Philippines have it, even Indonesia have it. We have not actually imposed this to the industry. Energy Efficient and Conservation Act. At the end of the day, when we talk about carbon, energy is actually one of the most killing factor. It goes back to whether you operate efficiently or not. That's why if you from the news they talk about voluntary carbon market. It is actually to, to encourage company to be more efficient, so you can actually go and trade. Government will allow this to be traded within the country, and at the same time, they will impose this on you, Energy Efficient and Conservation Act. FinTech is one of the, your operation use a lot of energy, 24 hours running, things like that. Whether the system that you use efficient in that sense or not. Your data center is efficient or not, whether it's green or not. Singapore going to green data center, okay. So that is whether you are operate efficiently as an industry, FinTech industry. Incentive now is time to government serious enough to impose this to the industry. You have no choice but to be efficient now. Government have actually gone through all the subsidized, and our energy being subsidized. We compare between us and all the surrounding neighboring countries. We are among the cheapest in that sense. So government have to do this, can no longer continue subsidize companies for no reason. Company must go efficient. They must, to be sustainable, they must go efficient. In terms of their operation, your waste management, energy usage, in terms of their production, they must go, they have no choice. So coming back whether it's just or not, and of course, to the Malaysian government, it's time. But we're looking at our neighboring countries, people are complaining, why Malaysia have a cheaper petrol? Indonesia, wow, so much different. Why? It's just, but talking about, goes back to whether the value of our greenhouse gas, in that sense, is much more cheaper here, people don't care. They have no choice but to pay higher price for their energy. But we don't care. That's a problem to the local industry. In general, I'm not saying any specific. But it's good, some of the medium company, they have actually serious enough to embark, to be more efficient, to embark into cogen, especially, to be more efficient in terms of their energy usage. Of course, they have no choice because their product is actually non-green. But they can be involved in sustainability by, be more efficient in terms of their energy usage and their waste management, and involve seriously into circular economy. That's I can say about it.
There is a $1 trillion opportunity to transition to green in the ASEAN
A lot.
region. And though we talk about the challenges, and there clearly are challenges, there is an outcome on the opportunity side, as well as the risk side, obviously, if we don't. So we've got 2 minutes left. I will ask you one last question. We know that this is a complex thing. If it was so easy as, yes, we'll all just turn green so we can take advantage of that government procurement, we'd all be doing it already. So for those in the crowd who are early on in their journey, what would be the one thing that if they're going to walk out of this room today and do, what would you tell them to do?
Malaysian government actually have a lot of offerings to support sustainability, to support companies to go into green. In fact, industry is actually now the focus. A lot of incentive all the while, since 2010 until now, focus given to a lot of industries, companies. Small incentive expected to be announced soon, for the general public. We hope this is actually will come. So do check government sites. There's actually more than 1,000 grant and incentive, if you must know, being offered by Malaysian government through several ministries and agencies. I'm not sure whether you're aware. And then this is actually a lot of free money being given out for you to be, but more often than not, sad story, some of the grant or whatever incentive is not being taken up at all. No inquiries received. So there's a lot of incentive out there offered by Malaysian government for you to be sustainable, to be green. Do check government websites. There's a lot out there, and then it will actually support you to be more green, to be, to embark into sustainability. So that's what I can say, because if I were to go into one by one, as I said, more than 1,000. So if you don't want to take the opportunity, you want to go the hard way, spend your own money, of course you're welcome. But Malaysian government, we do have a lot of support to embark into sustainability.
Thank you. If I can just say one last parting word. There was a great quote that I read from a fellow from the UNFPI, the United Nations Environment and the Finance Program, where he said it used to be enough that companies needed to declare that they cared about the environment and they needed to do something. Now is the time that everybody needs to do everything. So that sense of urgency is great. So thank you very much to Kamar. Thank you to Elavandi for this time to talk about sustainability within the context of FinTech. Please do come to the Singapore FinTech Festival. I've been, it's fantastic. Singapore is a great place this time of year. So I'll hand it back to our host. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you for what is a very exciting panel on sustainability. One thing which Somnendu you agree as well is whenever there is a panel that comes out and it talks about sustainability, sometimes half the rooms disappear. What we have here is, if you look around yourself, a full room still of people. So shall we give ourselves another round of applause? And this room is, I would say, at least 70 packs, so great work. So thank you everyone for your participation. We hope you have enjoyed. And we'd like you to join us at the Singapore FinTech Festival once again, I think 2nd to 4th of November, happening at the Singapore Expo. And I think as next steps, we have a networking activity next, as well as some drinks, as well as some F&B behind. So we hope everybody will stay there and join in. If there's any questions that you may have, you may approach, I guess, some of our speakers and ask them directly as well if you're interested. Thank you, and have a great evening.